Hi everyone, I'm Lisa and welcome to Lisa's Stamp Studio. The card we're going to be creating together today is both for fall and for Halloween. The same layout with just a small tweak to it and mostly using designer series paper and cardstock. Here's the card we're going to be creating, and this is the simple fall version, but I've got a fun Halloween tweak to this card that includes some really cute sketched on faces that I'm going to teach you in today's video. If you're here visiting from YouTube, you'll be able to find a link down in the description bar below, which will lead you to the pictures, cutting dimensions, and supplies for today's project. Let's head over to the stamp table and let's get started. Here's a close-up of the two cards that I was showing you in the introduction. This is the one we're going to be making together today because I want to teach you how to make the faces in case you want to. This way is simply without them, and I just added a small piece of linen thread to the top. I'm starting with a piece of crumb cake cardstock. I'm going to fold that in half. I like to use my bone folder for that nice crisp edge. I'm going to use the Night of Navy ink pad to stamp the greeting on. Since we're doing the Halloween one, I've gone out and pulled the greeting that says Trick or Treat. This is from a two-part stamp set called Itty Bitty Greetings. Lots of different greetings and verbiage for both the inside or outside of your cards. And this is where I've pulled this greeting from. Using the Night of Navy ink, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ink that up, and I'm going to stamp my greeting down here near the bottom. That's all the stamping we're going to do on our card. Let's do some embossing. I've cut a smaller piece of the same color. This is crumb cake cardstock. And I'm going to be using a brand new dynamic embossing folder. This is the corrugated folder. Now, I have numerous dynamic folders, and I've never had a problem with the cardstock cracking. But this one I've seemed to have problems with it if you don't mist the cardstock first, which is what you're supposed to do when you're using these dynamic folders. Here's one I did before you joined me, just to give you an example. You can see the deep impressions and how it actually has created worn edges along those bumps in the corrugation. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by misting this cardstock. I have my Stampin' Spritzer, and all I did was fill this with tap water. I keep this one in my Stamp Studio labeled so that I can use it specifically for these things. There's a very small opening here where the mist is going to come out, so make sure you've got it aiming in the right direction. And then you're just lightly going to place a mist of water on both sides. I've got my Big Shot platform here, and because it's a dynamic folder, you're not going to need a clear mat on the bottom. So I'm going to place this inside the folder, and I want my lines to go straight up and down. I'm going to place this on the platform and one clear mat over the top, and then we're going to crank this through. You may see those little speckle marks, and that is from the mist, and that dries quickly. You can see though that the paper hasn't ripped at all. What the mist does is help to condition the paper to avoid those tears. I'm going to be using designer series paper from the holiday catalog, and the designer series paper I'm using is called Toil Trouble, and it's on page 49 of the holiday catalog. Now, if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and you're interested in a copy of the holiday catalog and or a copy of the annual catalog, I would be more than happy to send you a complimentary copy. Just leave me a comment below. I thought these were difficult for you to see, so I've brought out the package of designer series paper to show you the varied patterns. There are 6 different patterns, and the papers are double-sided. So we've got this one with the cauldrons, and this one with the little girl witches, and this one with some really fun little ghosts, and bats, and hats, and the pumpkins, which is where I got the pattern for today's card. Like most of Stampin' Up's designer series paper, they are double-sided, which allows you a lot of versatility. Several of these patterns can be used all year round on other cards. I simply cut out several of the pumpkin images right from the designer series paper, the pumpkins that I wanted to use. I did create their faces while they were on the designer series paper because I found that if I messed it up, I could easily go to another image before cutting it out. I've cut out the 3 pumpkins that I wanted after I've drawn on the faces, and now we're just going to simply cut around here. I'm going to use my paper snips, and I'm going to cut very close to that printed image, but I'm going to leave a little bit of white paper all the way around so that I don't distort the actual printed image. I knew it would be difficult for you to see me drawing on this colored designer paper, so I've brought in a piece of Whisper White cardstock to show you how I created the faces. I'm using the black journaling pen in order to do this. I find this really easy to use, and you're going to want to get it started on your paper to make sure that it runs smoothly. All I did was I created an arch for the eyes, and I wasn't even concerned that they were even. Remember, this is supposed to be fun and whimsical. I created a slanted line to connect those areas. I filled in 2 half circles on either side and colored them in using the pen. Again, if they're not identical, it's totally fine. Depending on your expression, go ahead and give yourself some eyebrows and a nose of any shape that you'd like. And then, of course, a mouth. This one is going to be a little bit scared or shocked. So I created a small oval again, very much like the eyes, and then just a little chin mark. The others I created with expressions underneath their eyes simply by adding a small line on either side. Vary your expressions on each of your pumpkins. This is something you can even let the kids do. Teach them how to do it and let them create the faces. We're coming back to the base of the card, and I'm going to add some faux stitching around the border, and I'm going to be using the white chalk marker. Just like we did with the black pen, you're going to want to make sure you get it started. There's a small black spot here on the Stampin' Grid paper, and this is where this chalk marker will show up very nicely. So I always like to get it started so I know it's running smoothly. I find it's easiest for me to work in a horizontal fashion. So I'm going to start by creating small stitch marks across the top. I'm looking to do my very best to make sure they're fairly even, but it's very forgiving. And then you're going to turn your paper to make it easy for your hand, and you'll do the same thing all the way around the perimeter of your card. Once that's finished, we're going to go ahead and add our pumpkins to our corrugated piece. Go ahead and arrange them how you want them centered on that panel. Depending on the size of the pumpkin from the Designer Series paper, you may need to extend this just a little bit. I'm going to use dimensionals to adhere mine, so I'm going to pull off several, and I'm going to start with my smallest one in the center because I find it's easy for me to manipulate the outside images to compensate. Removing the paper backing, and then I'm looking just to center this the very best that I can. I'm not going to push really hard just in case I have to lift it up to reposition it. I'm going to do the same now with this pumpkin. And I'm going to place him here. And this pumpkin's a little bigger, so I think it's going to overlap a little bit. And then we've got one more. This now is going to get mounted here on the card base. And I did find that snail adhesive worked well, but you're going to want to take your time because it's only going to adhere to the raised areas from the embossing folder. So I'm going to add it all the way around the circumference of this cardstock because I want to make sure I have enough adhesion for it to stick. When your paper is embossed, you're going to see that it shrinks a little bit in size. Although I cut this 5 inches long, it's probably more like 4 3/4 at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere that here, looking to center it the very best that I can. And then I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to rub from the back to get the adhesive to stick to that base. I've cut myself about 22 inches of the beautiful Night of Navy gingham ribbon. Now I was real concerned that this color didn't go well with the pumpkin because obviously a linen thread or a burlap would be more predictable, but I was really happy with the contrast. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wrap this through the inside of my card as well, and I'm going to come up over here and I'm going to make a bow. Go ahead and pull your loops, make them tight, and you can see that my loops are too large and my ends are not even. To get these more to the size I want for the card, I'm going to place my finger on the knot and I'm going to lightly pull the outside strands of the ribbon to adjust those loops. And once I have it where I like it, I'll go ahead and grab my paper snips and then I'll go ahead and give my ends a little bit of a haircut to finish them off. There we have our real cute, simple Halloween card. Again, I want to share with you the one that is not Halloween for fall. The greeting from here comes from the Painted Harvest stamp set, which is also in the current catalog. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.